it is an experience that they just won't forget. And I think it was a very, very important thing for the Spanish people to do, to recognise that commitment and that sense of purpose that the brigaders had.
I have forgotten. We are going to come back for a little bit.
That's all right.
I have read in the book one experience. Your father was in a hospital because he was injured, and when he was recuperated, he was right. Some of his men, some of the soldiers were lost, were caught or something like this, and he went for his men. He took us and he came back to the front. Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, he was in hospital. He'd been wounded and he was in hospital, and he heard that his brigade were in a very, very difficult position, and he discharged himself from the hospital and managed to get a lift on a lorry and found his men, and I can remember his friends telling me that there was just, when they saw him jump off the lorry, there was just this great applause and cheering, because they were very, very pleased to see that he was back.
What ideals did the brigaders give us?
Difficult question. I think that what they gave us was a sense of internationalism, that what is happening in another country is important, and that you can't just close your mind or your eyes to what is happening in other places. And I think that sense of realising that if democracy is under threat in one country, then there's a chance that it might be under threat in other countries. And I think that is a message and something that is still important today, even more important today, that what is happening in Iraq affects us in some way, and we live in a globalized world, and I think that one of the things that I would have my country that was important, what was happening in other countries mattered as well, and that I was part of an international movement. And it was for that reason, I think, that I went and worked in Africa, because I think that came from my parents. I think I realised that I wanted to work in a country. In my case, it was Tanzania, because, and I know that sense of what happens in the world is part of my responsibility. I think that came from my parents. I'm sure that I would never have gone to Africa if my father had not gone to Spain.
Has they got place in nowadays world? Nowadays they have a place, a new brigadier. Is something real? Could be something real.
Do you mean could it ever happen again?
Yeah.
I think warfare and fighting has changed so much. I think it's quite hard to imagine that ever happening again. I think the closest time maybe was the Vietnam War, when I certainly remember groups of young people talking about should we go and fight in Vietnam against the Americans. They never did, but that I think that was the closest time to that happening. But I think in terms of fighting, I think that military warfare has changed so much, and the weaponry has changed so much, that I cannot imagine it happening again. But certainly I think with young people, that sense that young people, a lot of young people have, that what is happening in other countries is important to them, and that they can do something in terms of campaigning and demonstrating. I think that those ideals still exist.
And to conclude, do you think Spain owes something to the international brigades?
I think that most of the men and the women who went to Spain would not say that Spain owed them anything. They were certainly pleased to be thanked and to be recognised. But I think that for those people who went to Spain, they did it because it was important to them, and they weren't expecting glory, and they weren't expecting medals. They did it because there's a very famous poem, I think it's by C.D. Lewis, and he says they went because their eyes could see no other way. And I think it was that they couldn't ignore this. They had to do this. It was so important to them. But I think that was why they went, not for glory.
Okay, we have finished. Just say thank you to you. Thank you to your father.
Thank you.
Okay. That's all. Great.